Welcome back to Heimler's History, and by the end of this video, you'll know everything you need to know, and more, about the history of queer rights and its many unknown people, processes, and events in North America from the 20th to 21st century. So if you're ready to get those brain cows milked, then let's get to it! As for earlier times, the 1800s and prior barely recognized the idea of homosexuality, not even coining the terms queer, gay, and homosexual until late into the 19th century. And though we have these labels now, each of them have their own complicated backstory. Not having these titles did not stop people from being gay. As for people who were during this time, they just kept it on the down low. Even earlier, same-sex relationships and marriages were normalized in certain societies. All the way back in 2400 BCE, two Egyptian men were buried in close embrace, the same way that a married couple was buried. Not brothers or best friends. Their tomb currently stands as the first documented gay couple and gay people. Now back to more current times. The stigma and opposition to homosexuality did not happen all at once, but rather a more gradual change over time due to misinformation and religious interpretations. Early into the 20th century, the Society for Human Rights was formed. Founded by Henry Gerber in late 1924, this organization was the first of its kind, advocating for gay rights, although it quickly disbanded due to political tension. Later on in 1950, the employment of homosexuals and other sex perverts in government was the name of a Senate report written and distributed that caused the firing and discharging of many gay people in military offices and government jobs. This incident is known as the Lavender Scare. In 1953, President Eisenhower signed an executive order that banned homosexuals from working in federal government. This is known as Order 10450. And just 2 years later, the first lesbian rights organization formed, called Daughter of Bilitis. It created a new, safer place since lesbian bars and clubs were not safe from police raids. Fun fact, Illinois was actually the first state in the US to reverse its sodomy laws or anti-homosexual laws all the way back in early 1962. About 4 years after this, in 1966, a cop manhandles a trans woman in a coffee shop, causing her to start what is known as one of the first trans rights riots. In 1969, a more famous movement occurs called the Stonewall Rebellion. This happens in New York when police try to raid a gay bar, as they typically did at the time, but this time, the queer and trans people of the bar decide to take a stance against them, which led to a 3-day protest. This is thought to be the spark of the gay liberation movement. Speaking of the famous Stonewall Rebellion, one important figure of that rebellion and the overall movement was a trans and gay woman named Marsha P. Johnson. She became famous for her advocacy and participation in drag shows. She was also close friends with Sylvia Rivera, a trans woman who also participated in drag and helped lead these protests with Marsha P. Johnson. Marsha is often considered the most well-known LGBTQ advocate, as she stood out for her creativity in many fields, alongside her advocacy for those dealing with AIDS. On the topic of influential queer figures, here are some cool history dudes you probably didn't know were gay. Because it was not ordinary or widely acceptable at the time, many of these are highly suspected due to written or documented implication, and some of these are Leonardo da Vinci, Hamilton, and Emily Dickinson. Famous painter Frida Kahlo was also known to be openly bisexual, and more recently we've had musicians and artists like Freddie Mercury, Elton John, Tracy Chapman, Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, and Madonna. In the 21st century, many famous people are open about their identities, such as Ellen, Elliot Page, RuPaul, and my personal favorite, Chappell Roan. Okay, back to the academics. On June 28th in 1970, the one-year anniversary of Stonewall, many people marched for gay rights causes. This became known as one of the first LGBTQ pride parades. While talking about this period, I should probably mention queer coding and queer media, as they played a large role in connections and awareness at the time. Queer coding is the act of using speech or style to imply sexuality to others. This concept is prominent in film and books and other media, not just by fans, but also writers, directors, and other creatives who want to create representation where representation is due. During World War II, lots of women joined the workforce as men were away at war, and that fostered many lesbian relationships. Carabiners became a more masculine expression of female and lesbian identities in the 1960s and 70s, specifically for butch lesbians because of their use in typically male-centered fields. Other forms of this include the handkerchief for gay men, or general violets, green carnations, and specific color coding for certain flags or other things. Okay, now let's talk about my favorite topic in this video, queer media. Most representation up until about the 1970s was negative depictions of queer and trans people, if there was any at all. Once positive representation was created, many stereotypes were played into, and most of the time the characters were side characters or just there for comedic relief. Throughout history, the LGBTQ community has found a safe place in arts for its fluidity, although this is especially true with musical theater. Many musicals have included gay people early on, such as Rent, Falsettos, Cabaret, and Rocky Horror Show, alongside many others. These shows have even shown awareness for AIDS, transgender people, and drag.
A drag queen? A drag queen. I am the queen of drag.
Even up until 1972, being homosexual was a part of the DSM, or Diagnostic and Statistical Mental Disorders. This meant that gay people were fired from their jobs and forcibly put into asylums just for being gay. In 1973, it was removed from the DSM, but it was just replaced by the title Sexual Orientation Disturbance, and it wasn't fully removed until 1987. These mental illness titles allowed for therapists to justify their use of chemical castration, electroconclusive therapy, and lobotomies to cure them. And even more recently, it was not until 2019 that the World Health Organization removed being transgender from their mental illness list. These mental health titles also led to a mental health crisis in the LGBTQ community due to the new influx of discrimination and severe stigma against them. One famous advocate, Harvey Milk, fought for the jobs of queer and trans people, although sadly his life was cut short in 1978 when he was assassinated. The next year, 75,000 allies and LGBTQ people marched for the civil rights of their community, becoming what was known as the First National March on Washington. Sadly, in 1981, the first report of a newfound and rare cancer was reported by the New York Times. At the time, it was only found in gay men, gaining it the title GRID, or Gay-Related Immune Deficiency Disease, but later on it was found in others, and they pleaded for the title to be changed to AIDS. Although the AIDS crisis is well known now, at the time it was often neglected or used as a reason for discrimination. In 1987, the Second National March on Washington occurred with approximately 750,000 people, and this one centered on getting President Reagan to recognize and help those suffering from HIV or AIDS. Disappointingly, Reagan did not address the crisis until he was in the final year of his final term. Just a year later, Reagan leaves office and Bush enters, where he signs a new act for a program that provides federal funding for those dealing with HIV or AIDS. It's called the Ryan White CARE Act. Side note, you may have heard of the pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness, but there's also the red ribbon, which is for HIV/AIDS awareness, and it has been that way since 1991. Double side note, one of my all-time favorite artists became popular around this time in New York for his art that spread awareness for those dealing with HIV and AIDS, and also for the LGBTQ community. Keith Haring was an openly gay artist that brought his art to many public places in New York, like the subway stations, but it often got him arrested for vandalism. Fun fact that I just found out, when Keith Haring was invited to Madonna's wedding, he brought Andy Warhol as his plus one. In the late 20th century, there were many improvements in the political and societal views of the LGBTQ community, yet new discriminatory policies were still getting put in place. One example of this is the 1993 Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy that made it so openly gay and trans people could not serve in the military, and this was not repealed until 2011. Another one is in 1996 when President Clinton signs the Defense of Marriage Act, which basically says that marriage is between a man and a woman in any state where it's illegal for a separate sort of marriage, and people with that separate marriage come into it, that marriage just isn't real. Nice one, Clinton. You just set us back another 2 decades. Luckily, in 2003, the Supreme Court case Lawrence v. Texas ruled all sodomy or anti-gay laws unconstitutional in the U.S. Calm down, Cam and Mitchell. Gay marriage wasn't fully legalized for another decade.
I just want to dance with the ballet!
But in 2004, Massachusetts was the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, and in 2011, Obama decided that the Defense of Marriage Act was unjust. More recently, in 2015, gay marriage is finally legalized in all 50 states in the Obergefell versus Hodges Supreme Court case, and it's coming up on its 10th year anniversary this June. While this video only serves as a brief overview and covers the US, there are so many more figures, court cases, and important events I didn't even mention. But there are plenty of books, websites, and videos online that are definitely worth giving a watch. While there's been plenty of progress over the years, history never stops. There's still room for further equality, and advocacy is just as important now as it was before. P.S. It's a lot easier to facilitate this progress if you speak up and find others, but that's all that I have for you today. On the flip side, Heimler out.
He explained I've hepatitis too.
Hepatitis.